Good morning. Today is a rather somber day, despite the circumstances. Today, more than 100 individuals with over 133 cases between them have had cases related to Sergeant Watts have had their cases vacated. There are 2 additional court dates to the date that you had today. On February 8th and February 16th, we will not oppose an additional 30 or more cases. Today, we withdrew our opposition to 14 cases. I said that this is a somber day. We were able to provide relief to those who were wrongfully convicted based on the actions of a corrupt police officer and his unit. We were able to provide the relief to right the wrongs of the past, but make no mistake, this is a sorrowful, sorrowful moment, knowing that these individuals will never get that time back in their lives. Their families will never get that time back, and their futures were dictated by the actions of these officers. And while this is in fact a sorrowful day, I do take pride in the work of the Cook County State's Attorney's Office and the members of our team for the concern that they have shown in these cases that we inherited from the county. We were known as the false confession capital of the United States. We have led the country for years in the vacating of wrongful convictions. It is even more egregious that these wrongful convictions were tied to the hands of those who were responsible for protecting the peace and serving the community. I want to thank the Exoneration Project for their efforts in working with us collaboratively to address these wrongs in the past. We must continue to rebuild trust in our criminal justice system. The integrity of our system requires that even when one of us in law enforcement goes afoul, the rest of the system must do its part to uphold truth and justice. This is integral to public safety. I cannot say it enough, that the work that we saw today in the vacating of these wrongful convictions at the hand of corrupt police officers is integral to making sure that today our communities are safe. We ask every day for members of the community to step up and work with us to solve crimes, to come into court. If they don't believe that the system is fair and just, and in fact, if the system is designed to hurt them, they won't help us. And we need them. As we saw last week, where the community of Little Village came together and stepped up and worked with law enforcement to solve for the murder of an 8-year-old child. This matters, the relationship with the community and the owning when we have done wrong. Once again, I find myself in the position of offering an apology to those individuals who were caught up not only in a crime that they didn't commit, but again, caught up by those who were sworn to protect them. I want to assure everyone in our communities that we are actively working in the State's Attorney's Office to make sure that what happened with these Watts cases will never happen again. We want to assure for the next person that this is not how justice is served here in Cook County. Again, these days are difficult. These days are difficult. That the men and women who are impacted by these actions today are not standing here with us. But if you talk to them and talk to them about how their lives have been uprooted and impacted, that this is not a day of celebration. This is a day where we have to reckon with the history of our system and vow to do everything within our power, again, to make sure that it never happens again.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Josh Tepfer, and this is Sean Starr. I have very little to say. You've heard me talk many times. I agree with everything that the state's attorney said. I'm in no position to accept her apology on behalf of our clients. I'm only here to say that, to me, she is not the one who needs to be apologizing. And the lack of apology from everyone else is astonishing. So we thank the state's attorney for taking this review extraordinarily seriously and her commitment to rectifying these wrongs. We thank the Honorable Judge Reddick for the obvious amount of time she put into reviewing these cases and learning about it, and what she said, the blight on this system that continues. Sean and I want Sean up here because what Ms. Foxx said, we live every single day. These aren't blank names on a piece of paper. These are real human beings that we are in touch with every single day, calling and asking why this happened, how can we fix it, and why is it taking so long. And so it's great that that this happened today, and we're going to continue to get those calls, and I don't have much more else to say. Sean?
Yeah, I would just add, I also thank the State's Attorney's Office. It's the last several years have been a slow reconciliation process for our clients. Sergeant Watts and his corrupt crew savaged a community. They decimated brown and black men and women, a whole generation of them. And the city of Chicago let it happen. And that's the thing. Judge Reddick said today that many people tried to bring attention to what was going on down at Ida B. Wells. And it took this long. It took almost 20 years for any kind of reconciliation process to start. Hearing their names for our clients that were on the Zoom, they were able to hear their names called. It says something, but it doesn't give them their lives back. It's just a start.
Can we hear Joel?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
That's all right.
Sorry, Joel.
That's okay. Joel Flaxman, Flaxman. I'm a private attorney. I represent 7 of the 20 cases that were vacated today. The exoneration project represents the remainder. As everybody said, we're grateful, and this is a good day for justice for our clients. There are many more clients who we're fighting for. There's also more accountability that we're asking for. And while I'm up here today, I do want to call on the city to finally take some action to hold these officers accountable. And we heard a lot about Watts, who's off the force, but many of his team members are still there, are still drawing a salary, and we have investigations at the city that have not gone anywhere for 4 years. So the message today is great step for the people getting justice today, a lot more justice needed for a lot more people, and some action needed from the city of Chicago.
Attorney Foxx, I wonder if you could speak to me. In other jurisdictions, in other states where this has happened, they've said, we can't sort them. They're just, these are corrupt officers, we're going to fight all of them. How can you, in the face of all of this, still stand by some convictions and not others? Wouldn't it be more prudent to look for these officers who are involved and say, let's just wipe them out?
Phil, we have taken a meticulous review of these cases over the course of the last almost now 5 years. And while I recognize that it would be a much swifter process, we want to do our due diligence as officers of the court to be able to say that, in fact, that the persons were not guilty of the crimes for which they were accused. We recognize and we take obviously into account the officers who were involved, their role in it, and where appropriate, we dismiss those cases. And so I think the process has been, as was pointed out earlier, it's been a slow-going process, but it's a process that we believe that we can assure the people of Cook County that we've done our due diligence to ensure that every stone was turned to make sure that these people who we are vacating the convictions for, in fact, deserve so.
So on what basis is your office opposing some of these remaining convictions?
Again, we have to talk about them on the individual basis. It depends on who was working on the cases, the time period that we're looking at, the sufficiency of the evidence or other evidence. And so it is being done on a case-by-case basis, and the fact that we are over 100+ cases so far talks about the volume. These are cases that are 20 years old, and we're talking about files that are up to here. And so it is a process that has been painfully slow, but one that we believe that must be done meticulously to ensure the accuracy of our work.
Does the office still have the policy in place of not calling some of these watch-related officers as witnesses in any proceeding?
Our office continues to maintain the policy of not calling these officers in cases that are pending before the courts today.
So with that in mind and what Joel, what Waxman just said, most of these officers are still on the force. They're still drawing checks. They're going to get a pension. They're not being called as witnesses, and they're not being used as police officers. Could you speak to that?
I don't run the Chicago Police Department, nor do I run the city of Chicago. I think what has been clear and established is, again, if you heard Judge Reddick's ruling this morning around what has happened here and the fact that we are now 100+ cases, these officers have lost the ability to have credibility within these courts. And what happens to them administratively or with their employment is something that needs to be reconciled with the city and the Chicago Police Department.
So talk about the expense to your office, both financial and in terms of reputation and everything else that's thought.
I mean, the expense to our office, we have a dedicated unit, both in our conviction integrity unit and our post-conviction unit, where we've provided some additional supports to them to do this work. I want to commend Carol Regala and Nancy Aducci from those units who have worked tirelessly over the course of the last 5 years. In terms of the reputational cost, we have to have an honest conversation about what our criminal justice system in Cook County has looked like. And I will tell you, I take it incredibly personally because I've overseen this office for the last 5 years, and I've seen press conferences related to cases that have come before this court, and I recognize that for people who live in the community, who I talk to every day about why they won't engage with our office or with police, the damage that was done by Sergeant Watts and his crew, the damage that was done to communities like the Ida B. Wells housing projects, well, let's make no mistake. Sergeant Watts believed that the people who lived there had lesser value and wouldn't be believed. He preyed on a community that was impacted by crime and poverty and that had been neglected because he knew and their crew knew that they wouldn't be believed. And if you look in this courthouse and you look at the communities that have been impacted by violence, they're not very different than the Ida B. Wells housing projects. And when you ask yourself, well, why don't they want to cooperate? The long-lasting damage of corrupt police officers damages the credibility of our entire system. And so we must work with the same feverish effort to stop violent crime in the present, to right the wrongs of the past so that we can rebuild the trust in the community so that they can cooperate with us as we do our work moving forward.
One more question. If your office is opposing some of these convictions all the way through and might go to a hearing, right, before a judge, how would that work if your office has this policy of not calling some of these watch-related officers?
You know, Megan, we'll take it when it comes. Again, we recognize the credibility of some of these officers have been challenged, and the recognition of that means that we would not use them. And if there were a situation in which that was the only alternative we had, then obviously that would dictate how we would move forward.
Ms. Fox, do you believe the U.S. Attorney's Office should bring federal charges against Officer Van Dyke?
Let me say, because I think it bears repeating, Laquan McDonald's life mattered. It mattered. And the fact of the matter is Jason Van Dyke was convicted for his murder and also convicted 16 times for aggravated battery with a firearm. Those 16 counts would warrant a far greater sentence than was meted out to Jason Van Dyke. That 3.5-year sentence that Jason Van Dyke was handed down did not fit the 16 shots to the body as that boy laid on the ground. And so I would suggest and hope and pray for a criminal justice system to have any integrity, that any and all those who have the power to make sure that there's accountability for the death of Laquan McDonald do everything within their power to hold him accountable.
A follow-up. Have federal authorities informed your office of the status of their investigation?
I've not had any conversations with the current administration regarding Laquan McDonald's civil case or civil rights case by the federal authorities.
That sounded like a yes, that you would support bringing federal charges against the indictment.
I'm not the federal prosecutor, and certainly I'm in no position to tell the federal prosecutor what to do. What I can say is, having looked at civil rights cases involving officers who have gone afoul of the law, whether that's in Minnesota or whether that's in South Carolina, the sentence that was put down for Jason Van Dyke does not meet the crime. And if there's an ability to do something about it on the federal level, then by all means something should be done.
Do you believe the office, the U.S. Attorney's Office, should inform the public what it did, if anything, to the case?
Yeah, I believe the U.S. Attorney's Office has their own protocols on how they address these issues. Again, I think the people of Chicago and Cook County, having lived through that era and understanding the long-lasting impact that the murder of Laquan McDonald has had on our communities, requires that we address the concerns that are being made in the community. And that's what's required. Thank you all. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, can we ask the attorneys? Thank you very much.
You know, I have a question. Why isn't anyone asking whether the U.S. Attorney should be looking at charges in the Watts-related matter? Because all of these officers are giving live testimony under oath that conflict with every single thing that you just heard happened and has happened now 130 plus times. And you talk about the life lost of Laquan McDonald, which is tragic and very, very real. Well, we're talking about 200 plus years in prison for my combined clients and the clients of Mr. Flaxman, which amounts to many, many lives lost as well, too. So,
Can you give us an idea of how many, if you know, how many clients you still have waiting that may be still coming through the system on this day?
we have, I've lost track of the numbers,
But outside of the 88, do you anticipate filing a petition?
yeah, we have, yes, potentially. It's nearing the end of our review. I've said this many times, we have never once sought out a client. They come to us, we vet the case, corroborate it where we can, and we bring the ones that we think are viable. We think every single one we brought in court is viable. We have others that, frankly, we're waiting simply because we brought a lot at once, and we'll see where we are. But there may be others, yes.
What does this mean to those clients? What does this mean to them, and why is it important?
I can't really speak for them, but the thing that sticks out to me the most is there is a desire to believe in the system after all of this that resonates through all my clients. As Judge Reddick said, so many of them tried to tell anyone who would listen what was happening to them. And just to be heard, just to be acknowledged, whether it's by Sean, me, or Joel, but especially by someone like the top law enforcement officer in our county, it's extraordinarily meaningful for them. And I don't know what else to say.
When you guys are bringing these cases and the state decides to either go through with them or vacate them, can you tell us, when you walk me through exactly when you're bringing these cases, what you see as the difference between some cases that the state doesn't oppose and some that they do?
At this time, I have been unable to determine what the difference is. We brought these cases, to answer Phil's question, You know, Joel and I and Sean, we talked all about it, and the reason we brought these 88 together was because we thought they were identically situated, essentially, so there's not really one that I can even say is any different from any others in my opinion. So the state is going to file their response, and I've been wrong before. Maybe I'll be wrong this time. I don't know. We'll see.
Just maybe you and Joel could both address the issue in terms of what it means as far as employment possibilities and why it's important to have their records clean.
Well, yeah, I think that's absolutely something that comes in. People take into account that having a conviction off your record really makes a difference for housing, for employment, and just for a individual feeling of justice and having some more trust in the system and how things work. To answer the question about how the cases differ, I think my cases in the Exoneration Project, we have the same view that each one of these people has presented the same evidence of innocence. You know, how the cases are different or how the state's attorney is treating them differently, obviously I can't answer. We're going to be back and forth on each one of the cases, and we hope that we will be able to convince the state's attorney, and failing that, we will have hearings where we convince a judge of the innocence of all our clients.
Last question. 20 convictions that were
That's right.
vacated today.
20 convictions.
Remaining out of the ones that were heard today.
That's correct.